think when I look to what's the most important factor for an outsourced supply chain, it's really making sure that that marriage of the customer and the CDMO, the CRO, the CMO really works. You know, if the culture isn't there, if the companies are just not a good fit, it's often just better to, you know, to part ways, frankly, amicably, and work with a company that's just a better fit. And I think that's one of the healthy things in the CDMO, CRO, CMO network, is that we have a huge variety of companies to choose from, not only technically, but also culturally. The key dogma for Agios, we're a personalized medicine company, so we're working in the oncology space, rare genetic disease, immuno-oncology space. For us, the market really is moving with our type of products with heavy biomarkers, is really moving to blurring the typical phases of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 studies, which have existed for decades, you know, in many ways. Our most recent molecule was approved off of phase 1 studies, so we obviously look towards CDMOs, CMOs that have an incredible ability to be flexible, because when that first card gets turned over, potentially in a phase 1 study, you suddenly realize you have this wonderful opportunity ahead of you to bring products to patients years and years and years ahead of when we might have anticipated they'd be needed. And having a CMO network that can support that is absolutely critical. Yeah, when we work with our CMOs, we obviously, if we haven't had a relationship with them to date, we visit those CMOs and we really get onto the floor with them, not only to really understand their compliance record, which you can get from either, you know, websites or themselves, or their quality management review minutes and such like, but also to get onto the floor to look at the culture of quality that exists at the CMO. Is it a dynamic place? Is it a communicative place? We find that in the long run, that's just as important, if not more important, than actually just gauging their compliance through metrics, which are often interpreted very differently between CMOs and even within innovator companies as well. We do use scorecards to measure the effectiveness of a company's operations, but I think there's an inherent risk with scorecards, which we have to be very careful of, and that's we need to maintain transparency between a CMO, CDMO, CRO, and the innovator company, the customer, as it were. It's very tempting to sometimes develop metrics which might reflect your company in a very positive manner. But if we don't have the transparency to what actually goes wrong, and things will go wrong, then we can't really judge how well the operation is, which is only going to kick itself down the line to producing errors in batches, and therefore potential disposition problems, potentially drug shortages and such like, which no one wants. It's been interesting at this conference to hear multiple references to techniques towards developing collaborative engagements between companies. I wouldn't say we necessarily use techniques. I think we really boil the industry and our operations down to what it really is, and that's an interaction between people to support people, the patients. And so it's really about, I wouldn't call honesty a technique, I wouldn't call transparency a technique, but it's actually, I think those principles are what we apply when we're interacting with our CMO network. Yeah, I think the industry of outsourcing, the industry of drug discovery seems to be going through a period of quite aggressive consolidation. That worries me to a degree. I think the maintenance of independence allows for innovation in a greater way. Personal opinion on my part. So I see a trend towards consolidation into those bigger and bigger and bigger companies, but I see a risk there. So hopefully those companies, the bigger companies, will work to maintain an independence of their subunits such that we can still leverage those really little niche environments that should exist within an ecosystem of a contract manufacturing network. Otherwise, I think we'll have the all singing or dancing networks of big brothers to choose from, and in that scenario, perhaps innovation won't thrive. Been a very enjoyable event, I think, from the perspective of being relatively focused on the outsourcing, supply network and such like. What I've enjoyed is seeing the spectrum of companies which have come to this event and the differences in the approaches that are being applied either to a mature company, mature small company, mature big company, versus the newer kind of evolving companies which have also been here. It's great also to see people looking at the same problem through different lenses. We're coming at the same topics again and again, but just there's nuggets in all of those by just looking at the way that companies or leaders are approaching a particular question.